Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you're enjoying the day so far. My name is Elif Bereketli. I'm a presenter with TRT World, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to today's Arts and Culture session titled Rewriting Trauma, Art's Role in Personal and Collective Rebirth. Let's begin. You've all seen these tough questions on the screens, and I'll be joined by three guests who've each turned their trauma into something creative and powerful. Together, we'll explore these questions and try to see how art can not only reflect on pain, but lead the way toward healing and hope. So let me introduce these three exceptional voices. Palestinian photographer and artist Bilal Khaled. Bilal, welcome to stage. Next up, let me welcome Palestinian artist, poet, and activist Lina Abu Jarade. Welcome, Lina. And last but not the least, Zuleika Patel, activist, author, global speaker, and social entrepreneur. Zuleika, please make it to the stage. All right. We have pretty big questions, pretty hard questions at hand. So we do have around 35 minutes. I'm going to start very quickly. Bilal, why don't we start with you? You have extremely powerful visuals in a good and sometimes maybe disturbing way as well. We're going to go deeper into the dynamics of it, but why don't you start with telling your story, your trauma, and how you took the step to deal with it through creativity and art. I don't know if you call it art, we'll talk about that as well, but through creativity, let's say that.
Okay, so as a Palestinian refugee, I was born in Khan Yunis refugee camp. So I was born with a trauma, actually. Unfortunately, this is the case like what happened with all of children who are born in Palestine in general, especially in Gaza. They found themselves like under the bombs, under the attacking, under like the displacement. Every day, every moment, they have like a trauma. So I feel I'm living with this trauma, not after the genocide. It's increased after the, of course, became more big after the genocide, but before was that, of course we had it, we should deal with it. So we was healing ourselves, we was treating ourselves with multi ways. For me as an artist, as a photographer, I choose like to use my art as a weapon for a change, as like a weapon for sending a hope from this land that like suffering from the killing, from the starving, from everything. All of the world, they know like Gazans people, they're living in a big prison. So you don't have like a luxury of life. You don't have a luxury of traveling, going to anywhere, like learning in any university. So you're starting to create something unique from nothing, from scratch. When you don't found a canvas, as you see, you drawing on any way. That's what I decided in Gaza 2021 war, when I going and using the missiles that is the occupation sent it to bomb a house, unfortunately, but it didn't explode. So I decided, as an artist who using art for resilience, to change this missile to an artwork. So I go there under like the drones, under the bombing during our covering.
Sorry to cut you off, Bilal. Is this your first ever image? Is this what you're telling us? Not really. No, I missed it.
I'm talking about, yes.
Oh,
in
really?
This,
That's
yes.
really important. Thanks so much for sharing that with us.
I'm talking about this image.
Thank you.
This image, it was in 2021 war, when I go to Gaza to visit my family, and then the same day the war started against Gaza. So I cut my vacation, of course, and going to covering on the field. During our coverage, we found this missile on a house in Gaza City. It didn't explode, and it was, imagine if it exploded, it will kill like more than 20 people there was in the home. So my message in this artwork, it's very clearly that we are Palestinian. We don't like run for a war. We don't run for a death. We love life. We catch with the life, and we are using an art for like for a resistance and for standing, and for also it's a message to raise our voices like to the whole world. Also in the same war, they attacked our offices there as a journalist. They attacked a tower called Al Jala Tower. You see it in the pictures also. So after they attacked our offices, this building, it was fully of media offices, journalists. And when they bombed it, so I decided to go there and drawing on the rebels. Journalism is not a crime. You can see it in this work. So this type of what I can do it by my camera and also by my art.
You know why I asked about the beginning of your story is that I think we have a lot of young people in our audience today, because this next is for young people, and I'm sure a lot of people are here to look for inspiration, and they are trying to find their ways into activism in a very critical time in history, I guess. So thanks so much for sharing that, and I want to turn to Zuleika now, because your story is pretty interesting and pretty unique. You started, you led your way into activism at a very early age, during high school. Please share that story with us and tell us when you felt like, okay, duty calls. I have to do this, because I have to help myself and others.
I, like many other South Africans that were born after 1994, and as many know that 1994 in South Africa marked the dawn of democracy and the end of the then apartheid regime. But because the regime was no longer constitutionalized, that doesn't mean that it was completely annihilated from society, and that doesn't mean that racism in South Africa disappeared completely and was buried with the apartheid regime. Racism in South Africa became institutionalized and systemic. And I, like many other South Africans born after 1994, into the dawn of democracy, saw that South Africa is not entirely a free society. We may be politically free, but without mental emancipation and without economic emancipation, what is political freedom? And I've always viewed South African society as laws can change, but at the end of the day, people need to change. And so I was born in the early 2000s to an interfaith and an interracial family. I was born to an Indian father who came from Karmad and a black Ndebele South African mother. And I was born a few years into democracy when South Africa had not entirely warmed up to the idea of interracial families. And growing up in a post-apartheid South Africa, seeing racism still attached to the fiber of South Africa, experiencing that paired with my personal experience of racism through seeing how I was never entirely accepted in society because I was the girl that came from a racially blended family. I was never accepted by my paternal family because of the Africanness that exists in my identity. And growing up seeing racism still attached to the fiber of the country you live in socializes you in a way where you end up wanting to change that, especially when it is attached to your every single day experience. In South Africa, Race is at the core of your entire experience and your outcome as a human being. Your outcome in South Africa is determined by your race, your success, what type of area you live in, what type of healthcare you'll access, what type of education system you'll access. All of those factors of your life in South Africa are largely dependent on your race. And growing up where my race was the subject of every single day, I knew I always wanted to contribute to fighting for a South Africa that is anti-racist, and not just a South Africa that is anti-racist, a world where racism doesn't exist. And when I got to high school, I found myself in an environment where I was confronting institutionalized racism. I went to a former segregated high school where there was a ban on afros, which it sounds bizarre, because why would you ban Afro-textured hair in an African country? And there was a ban on speaking African languages in Africa, by the way.
Zuleika, how can you ban hair? How did it come? Yeah,
through policies. Through policies that denied Black children wearing their hair naturally as it is, meaning you are being forced to assimilate into something which you are not, right? And I found myself in the middle of this system, and I knew that had to change, and that was when I knew, alongside my peers at the time, we want to start a movement against institutionalized racism. And so we started a movement called Stop Racism at Pretoria Girls High, which then started off as a peaceful protest with a petition that later became a movement of global solidarity against institutionalized racism. And it sparked a very important conversation in South Africa, a conversation that no one was willing to have in a country where globally it's deemed as a free country, but racism is still attached to the fiber of society. And that sparked my activism, and that's where everything began. And in that moment, that's when I realized the world is in a place where it commands young people to come to the forefront in shaping a just world, in shaping a world where justice and human rights are a reality for every single person on earth.
Please bear in mind, she was 13 when she did this, so it's pretty amazing. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us. I think this story deserves it, yeah. And Lena, you're so vocal and so active. You're running 2 institutions, you're active on social media, you're creating comics, art videos, murals. Where does this energy come from is the question that I want to come up with. But I also want to ask you, because our topic is art and trauma, I also want to ask you, how do you think your work helps you and others deal with the trauma that they're going through?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about energy. I usually feel like I'm not doing enough. Even though I try to create as much work as I can for Palestine and other causes, you still get that sense that I need to be doing more. And art really, I have so much to thank art, because it really allowed me to connect to my Palestinianness and being Palestinian. I grew up in the West, in the US and Canada, and I always felt like I didn't belong. I always felt like I was inferior, because the colonialists didn't just redraw our borders, they also breastfed us this feeling of inferiority, that we're never enough, that we're terrorists, we're extremists, we're weak, we're uncivilized. And so I felt that I was lost in the face of Western culture, in the face of these Western aesthetics. And art really allowed me to connect to being Palestinian. It allowed me to connect to my grandfather and his stories of Jaffa and him being expelled. It allowed me to understand what my role in this world is, that God has given me this talent in order to speak. Art for me is really just not allowing pain to go unseen. Like, I physically can't allow these things to happen without having a reaction. And so art for me is that physical reaction.
And do you remember the first time you felt like, okay, I have to do this, I have to protest what's going on around me and to me through creative ways. Do you remember the first memory, or it doesn't have to be something dramatic, but again, I'm thinking for the audience, and I really want to, get some inspiration for them from you.
No, that's a great question. Ghassan Kanafani actually describes this moment. He says that for every Palestinian in exile, there's a moment where their homeland is reborn in them. It's as if a scalpel is cutting them open and planting
How
that
beautiful
homeland
is that?
inside
Can you
them.
repeat that? It's a really good line.
Yeah, like the homeland is reborn inside of you. And it's a moment that changes your life forever. That, men don't grow, they're reborn in these moments. And for me, that moment happened when my family moved back to Jordan. And the proximity between Jordan and Gaza is, it's not very far. And I was looking at the news, 2008, 2009, these children being bombed, these limbs, and I felt an awakening of where was I? How did I not see these images before? Because as we know, it didn't start October 7th. They've been bombing Gaza for so long, and it's been happening again and again and again. And it awoke something inside of me of, I need to take action. I need to do something in a way that we're not desensitized. I think all of us today, we're scrolling on our phones, and it's just this consumption of these violent images. And of course, it raises awareness, but at the same time, we've kind of gotten used to it. And so what art does is it makes you pause, and it really forces you to kind of live in that moment and feel the empathy and feel the humanity and view it in a different way where you connect it to yourself. And so that's how I use art. It's really a way to evoke empathy and hopefully to create that moment of birth in other people who may not be Palestinian.
That's so poetic. That's so nice. Thanks so much, Lena. And Lena said that art, makes you pause. And I promise, have you seen Belal's Instagram account? It definitely makes you pause, for sure. Belal, you have so powerful images. I want to talk about your calligraphy, if I'm putting it right, your calligraphy work, but also your photographs. You're a war photographer as well. Can you please tell us how you think you touch other people's lives by your images? Maybe you can share a story that you have in mind. Maybe you met someone who's moved by it and did something. How do you think you're touching other people's lives with your images?
Actually, during our coverage in Gaza, especially in last genocide, I usually trying to focusing on like the humanity, the pain, about the weakness of these people, about of this like civilians. Most of the people, they was like civilians, and most of the injured, they came as a family. We are talking about the erasing like more than 10,000 of family from like the life. So usually I was capturing the moment, the war moment. It should be usual actually, as we see when the mom hugging her daughter. This is normal moment. Each mom here, they're doing it like daily with their sons, with their daughters. But unfortunately here, the mom, she is like in shock, and she is like hugging her daughter to protect her from like if there is another attack is coming, even if she is in the hospital. She didn't feel safe in this moment. You can see the fear in in her eyes. You can feel the weakness of this like woman and this girls. Also, the last moment, I was also focusing about the last moment between the father and the sons, and the mother and the daughters, and the wife and the husband. This last moment, this last touch, it's mean a lot for the people in Gaza. Even when they lost their relatives, they fighting anybody just like to give them to give a kiss, or like to touch their body, because they will not see them again. They will not touch them again actually. So this moment, usually I was capturing it just to remind the people around the world. Just imagine if this you, what you gonna do for them. Like imagine this father, imagine this is happening to your son, imagine this happening to your family. So when you put them like in this position, they like, most of the people actually like they are feeling a humanity inside, and they believe that they have like a humanity. they do a movement, they do like a change, they posting, they boycotting, they doing anything, even if it's small. But actually, it's affected for these cases, especially when you just say their names. If you say like Abdullah, 19, Muhammad, he's like 3 months, he killed by Israel. If you just say their stories, their names, you did something for their rights. They are not numbers, and we always like, we should keep like telling them their stories to the world.
These are undeniably extremely moving, but I think a lot of people would have the same question in their minds that I have right now. What is the cost for you personally, Bilal? How does this consume you, or maybe does it act in a surprising way, and it energizes you, I hope, and it keeps you going? But really, what is the cost for you?
My life. Yeah. This is like the main cost we pay it, and against like for this mission, for this job, is like losing our life, losing our families, losing our houses. And this is what's happening to me, to my colleagues. I lose some of my relatives. They bombed my house 3 times. My family got injured there. So, but the thing is, in October 7, I was in Doha, like in a safe area, like watching the news normally. But in the same day, I decided, without thinking, just to go to Gaza. I know it's dangerous. I know maybe I will lose my life there because of this. But I didn't like return back. I didn't think it twice. So I take a decision. I book my flight, and October 8, I was covering in Gaza. Why? Because this is what I'm like entering the journalism to be, not to watching the news. I take a risk for my life just to raise the voice of the victims there, and this is my people. And even if nothing happened to them right now, no one can stop the genocide, but this is like, it's gonna be evidence for the crimes. We can use it for the future, we can use it for the history. Also, it's showing the truth for the whole world, that there's a people, they are like killing now in Gaza through our lenses, through our images. And we, let's remember, until this moment, more than 210 of my colleagues, they was killing in Gaza because they are like wearing the press vest or like carrying camera. 210 of journalists, they are killing because of their job, of their missions, because the occupation they saw them, they are like more dangerous than the fighters who have guns, because we are showing the truth to the world.
I really do respect that. I really do respect that. And it sounds really stressing, but also really valuable what you're doing. And I think I'll ask for a round of applause for what Bilal is doing for his community. My question goes to all of you. I think I've met a lot of people who look down on activism through creativity, let me put it that way so that it includes all of your work. And they say that nothing without a gun or an immediate political power has the force to change societies or change culture. I'm sure you've met some people who, extended this criticism to you as well. What do you say to them?
Well, I never thought that when I started my activism, I'd at some point write books, I'd become an author. But it came to me when I knew that if I am fighting for a world that is anti-racist, because racism is the very insidious crime of denying certain individuals their humanity, and on that basis enforcing oppression. If my activism and the core of it is to eradicate racism, then why not write books where identities that are underrepresented are represented in a positive light, are represented in a light where you, as the person who has an underrepresented identity, feel seen, feel like your identity is empowered, and the world gets to see your identity beyond oppression, beyond what the West has documented about your identity. And so my first children's book, and I focused particularly on children's books because I believe that children are the future, and you'll never change society if you don't speak to children and you don't speak to the hearts of children. And when I wrote my first book, I knew that I wanted my first book to portray a girl that looks like me, that has an identity like mine,
Can
that
I show
has
your book
hair.
to the audience? I
Yes.
think, yeah.
That has hair just like mine.
This is-
And a book where
No.
black women and black girls are seen and represented in a positive light, and it forms part of rewriting what is written about the African identity across the world. And my second
Zuleika,
book...
sorry, this is your first book, right?
Yes.
It's My Coily Crowny Hair, and the second one is Brave Like Me. These are children books. These are really empowering, I think. I mean, I had time to just go through it. So yeah, I definitely want to share these with you, and please continue.
My second book tells the story of a girl born from an interracial family because it unpacks my story. And having somebody be able to pick up a book where they can see an Indian man positively represented, regardless of what racist connotations have been attached to an Indian man by Western colonial beliefs and media, and seeing that represented positively. And then also see a black woman and see a mixed race child positively represented changes something in someone. You're able to see humanity in people, because when you don't see a certain identity represented, or you don't see it at all, you take the humanness away from it because you start to believe it's insignificant. That's why you don't see it at all. And when you portray that positively, it changes the narrative completely. And that's why I've chosen to write books for children, picture books. And I believe that the books that I write are not just only solely for children, they're for humanity as a whole, because we all take something from being able to see an identity that is underrepresented, being represented in a positive light, and that contributes in one way or another to eradicating racism through seeing an underrepresented identity in a positive and empowering light.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to add anything? We're running out of time, but I definitely want to give you one last round of, yeah.
So as Muslims, I don't think many people understand that resistance through arts is actually part of our prophetic legacy. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he told Hassan bin Thabit, "Uhjuhum," which means fight them with your poetry, fight them with your tongue. And that just shows the importance of using words and visuals in order to fight oppressors. When you think about the watermelon becoming a global symbol of liberation, when you think about Yahya Sinwar's stick, when you think about, you know, all of these different symbols that have become symbols not just for Palestinian people, but for all oppressed people all around the world. We work with a lot of kids, and when you ask them, who's your role model? Who's your superhero? They don't answer Captain America anymore. They say Abu Ubaidah. They say Yahya Sinwar. And so we're seeing this shift in the way we perceive role models and heroes like Bilal, like journalists that are working in Gaza. And so I think that's the importance of art that can't be denied. God chose for us to be alive in this moment to witness this genocide. And so I think for each person here, really ask yourself, what is the creativity that I can use that God gave me in order to fight against this oppression? It doesn't have to be painting or writing or journalism. Every person has something that they can do in order to fight and not just stand and do nothing.
Mm-hmm. And before we, slowly wrap up, if you could tell the next generation of artists, activists, one thing that they won't find in textbooks, that they should definitely keep in mind, that perhaps you wish someone told you when you first started your journey, what would that be?
For me, I can say, like, show the truth even if it costs your life. That's it.
And that's what you're doing. Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, perhaps?
I think if there's one thing that isn't in a textbook that I would say to the next generation is that the world is changed by ordinary people who choose to be brave, who choose to be brave enough to share the truth like Bilal, who choose to be brave enough like Lena to write the truth and use their poetry to share the truth. The world is changed by ordinary people who choose to be brave enough. So if there's one thing that you could do is to be brave enough to contribute something to sharing the truth, something to resisting against oppression, something that you could share in standing up for what you believe in.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. And I know you have a little baby girl, and you brought her here in Istanbul, actually in this venue as well, which is when you say that I haven't done enough, I feel like I'm never doing enough. It's crazy to me because I know how hard it must be for you. You have a daughter. What advice would you give her, for example? I mean, building up on the previous question, what do you think people need to hear?
I named my daughter Yafa, and Yafa is the homeland, the city that I was expelled from. My grandparents were expelled from. And I named her that because it's almost like a wish and a promise that one day she will visit a free Yafa, inshallah. And every artwork that I do now, I think, what is the legacy that I want my daughter to inherit? What is the message that I want her to take away? And I think the most important thing is that we're not victims, we're not helpless. You're strong, you're powerful, you're creative. As Palestinians, as Muslims, as Arabs, as individuals with humanity, we deserve our dignity. And I think that's what I want her to take away. Not just the suffering and the history, but also the hope for the future and a liberated Palestine. So good.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I want to thank all of you for your vulnerability and for your power in this conversation. I think today we've seen that art and activism coming together doesn't really have easy answers, but doesn't the real transformation happen through messy and tough questions? So thanks so much for sharing your stories with us today. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you so much for sparing the time being with us. Now, don't go anywhere, because my lovely, lovely colleague, Lara Kılıçarslan, will be on stage for the last session of the day, so you don't want to miss that, I promise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.